easier because I was able to look it up. So I had an understanding of what the illnesses were before I came into the relationship, which it helps out a lot more than most people would think. Being ignorant of what these diseases are can really be confusing, especially if you're entering a relationship and you haven't ever heard of those words before. I mean, the first time I ever heard of fibromyalgia and endometriosis was when I read your profile. Those are the first times I ever heard those words. So I think it would definitely have been a lot more awkward if I was not told up front, but because you were honest, which anybody with a chronic illness should be honest, in my opinion, because there's nothing to hide. No, I wasn't really afraid.
Do you feel communication is a very important factor within a relationship, especially one where the other significant other has a chronic illness?
Well, communication is always important in every relationship, chronic illness or not. If you can't communicate your thoughts and feelings, I mean, it's both sides of the spectrum, what you think and what you feel. You're not going to get anywhere. You're going to get stuck in your relationship. You either plateau and not in a good way, like there's plateauing in love, where it's just a nice little constant warm stream of happiness, and then there's plateauing and not being in love, which is just cold and lonely and no one wants to be there. So yeah, you got to communicate every day, really. I mean, it doesn't have to be major, deep, conversation, just enough that everyone feels better and everyone knows that, in the relationship is being listened to and appreciated.
So it's definitely important for the one living with the chronic illness to be honest. But how important is it for the spouse who is living with a loved one who has a chronic illness? How important is honesty for them to be open and share how they feel? Like how your loved one's illness affects you. That's important to talk about too, right?
When a relationship is new, and it's on both sides, and I gotta address it just as one or the other. On both sides of the spectrum, when you're first beginning, yeah, you should talk about your fears, but as a relationship grows, both partners should start, and not to sound cold or callous, but start just accepting each other for what it is. Sometimes the fibromyalgia on your part, because you can't do certain things, does bum me out, and that's not to say that I don't love you, and if you're, or if your partner says, yeah, sometimes your fibro makes me sad. It doesn't mean they're sad with you, but you also have to accept that it's not, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But on the same length, after being together for 5 years, I have to accept the fact that you do have chronic illnesses, and if I can't accept that, then or if you're in a relationship and you can't accept that, then you should honestly think about what you're doing in that sort of relationship. In our case, I mean, sorry, kind of lost my train of thought there. Yes, communication. That's what the question was about. Yeah. In the beginning, it's very, very, very important to talk about how each other feel. But your feelings have to change. You can't hammer in the same points over and over again when it comes to communicating. And for example, if I continuously communicated to you that, your fibromyalgia is sucks, that it, you're not doing as much, or blah, 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 if I just talked about that for 5 years, communicating your feelings is one thing. Letting your feelings evolve is more important, in my opinion, because you can get stuck on the same emotions if you talk about it constantly. Especially if you're not exploring those emotions in those conversations. That's what's most important to me. But yeah, I mean, so long as you're communicating, um, I mean, if you're communicating right, everyone will get closer. Everyone will get better at accepting what's there. So yeah, I mean, honest communication, open, honest communication, with a willingness to listen and change, it will help out in a relationship.
Wonderful. Okay. Our next question is, how do you help your spouse cope with pain, especially on bad flare days?
It depends on the situation. Most days, because I have work, it's one of those, like it or not, you're gonna have to accept the fact that you're gonna have to get up kind of situations. Yeah, it sucks. I don't really like waking you up or making you move when you don't really want to. But at the same time, sometimes that's necessary. On bad flare days, sometimes it's necessary to gently get people's butts in the gear. But if it can be avoided, for sure, yeah. I mean, I try to anyway. I offer, massages. Uh, Occasionally, I offer like breakfast, lunch, and bed, stuff like that. Don't look at it like that. Anything to make the day just a little easier. You can't remove all the suck from a bad flare day, but a spouse could definitely try to make it better just by being there and willing to do a little bit more than might be normal.
How about when it comes to children? How do you think children are affected in a relationship with those who have chronic illness?
Personally, I think when they're younger, they don't really notice it because it's normal.
But even young kids can pick up that something's wrong, correct?
They can pick up that something's wrong, but any more than like if I wasn't feeling well. They know when people aren't feeling well. As far as I can see, especially with our son, you're just somebody who doesn't feel well often, unfortunately. But as they're going to get older, they're going to see other kids, and they're going to see their parents are different from their parents, and that might start leading into the questions, which again kind of loops back down to the communication thing. Just because you have young kids doesn't mean they aren't ready to hear that you are different. Kids don't need to know every little detail, obviously, but while they're still young enough, definitely I think it's worth explaining exactly why, mommy or daddy, I know that fibromyalgia could affect either sex, why mommy or daddy can't do as much as they want. Because when they're really, really young, they want to do everything. And no parent can do everything that a kid wants to do, but someone who suffers from chronic illness even less so. I think it's important to explain to them why you can't do as much, and make it easier for them to accept. I mean, like I said, it's really going to suck when they get older and they start seeing what quote-unquote normal parents are like. And so the sooner they realize what's going on, the better, in my opinion. But and so long as the kids understand, they won't be affected as much, and it's going to be a normal-ish relationship. Can't really say relationships with the kids are always normal, whatever that may be, but
Normal's just the word.
yeah, so is kid. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it affects them too much if they were born into it. Like, Cyrus is always going to know that he's not going to know a mommy that didn't have fibromyalgia. So I know some people, from what I understand, didn't get fibromyalgia until their kids were much older.
Right.
And I can't imagine how kids in that situation feel, but
What do you think are some important factors in leading a happy and positive life in spite of chronic pain and fibromyalgia?
It. Oh, hold on. For me, it's focusing on appreciating what you have now. You can't worry about what you can't have. People who worry about what they can't have are only making themselves sick and worried and unhappy. Better for you to say, well, I might have fibromyalgia, but I'm still, whatever positive aspect you can think of, because you can't think of your old life anymore. Yeah, that you had before fibromyalgia, that's gone. Any normal person could say the same thing too. A lot of people lose a lot of things as they get older, and no matter what. So you can't focus on the past, and the future is never certain for anybody. All you have now is that present moment. Right. To focus on anything but that, excuse me. I think if you want a real simple exercise in kind of appreciating and being a little happier, I think it was Eckhart Tolle. He says, stop everything you're doing. If you find yourself really, really stressed out, he says, stop what you're doing and quite literally ask yourself, do I really have a problem right now? Like a legit problem. When it comes to especially if you have chronic illness, pain comes with it. So is pain really a problem? Depending on the situation, probably not. I mean, in the sense of you can't lament your pain. It's a vicious cycle. It is. You can't be mad at the world for the pain you have. You're never going to be able to enjoy life. It sucks. Yeah, no one's going to deny you that suck. You're allowed to feel bad about it every once in a while. And no one's ever said you're going to be 100% happy all the time. That's not the point. The point is, to me, if you want a truly happy life, a majority of the time, a happier life anyway, you got to stop. And everybody does it. I mean, I whine and bitch when I have a backache. I can't even imagine what you guys feel. But I think if people stopped blaming or worrying so much about what they can't have anymore or what they can't have now, they'd feel better. And if they work towards what they can have, even if it's a small step forward, any small steps forward, baby steps, not even a crawl. You know what I mean? So long as you're going forward somehow in some way. Forward movement. Yeah, that's all that matters. If all you could take in the morning is, if you get up one morning and you find yourself waking up 1 minute earlier, and that's I understand with fibromyalgia, sometimes people can sleep and sleep and sleep. The fatigue. If you find yourself getting up at a surprising time, congratulate yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Feel happy.
The little thing. That's what matters. Finally, our last question is, how does it feel and how do you deal with when your significant other can't do something that you want to do, like go for a walk, go out to the park, go out to dinner, because of a flare or fatigue or pain or whatever symptom we may be experiencing that day? How does that make you feel, and how do you deal with that, and how do you process that?
Well, I mean, I'd be lying if I said it didn't suck. It does, but not in the sense that oh, woe is me. I can't go out for a walk. I can't go to dinner. I feel bad because we aren't able to do something together. But I've learned to process it as there's just some things that aren't within my control. I can't control everything. And again, it goes back to what I just said. You can't worry about that stuff. And I try to put it in different perspective. It sucks that I can't go out. How does she feel? She might want to too, but here she is, really, really ready to go, and there's this fatigue that's stopping her, or this pain that's stopping her. So I try to put myself in the mind frame of how